This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You also want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. And finally, we wrap it all up with Greg's peeps over at Noterno Home Services, Greg's home comfort company. If you're looking for a team that puts your comfort first, visit noternohome.com/Bedard for 10% off your next service. Could save you up to $1,000. All right, let's start here. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. Hopefully not a lot. But there was some things being made, Greg, about Drake Maye not being at Mike Vrabel's introductory press conference. Of course, we found out that Drake was on vacation. He was not only on vacation, he was also getting engaged. To you, at any point, was it a big deal? Was it a deal at all that Maye was not at Vrabel's presser?
It's absolutely no deal at all. It's not a big deal, not a little deal. It's no deal. Nobody cares. It's not important. I can't believe this was a long, plentiful topic of discussion. I mean, look, he doesn't need to be there. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares in the building. Nobody cares on his team. Mike Vrabel doesn't care. Nobody cares. Like, all you care about is he there in April when off-season workouts start? The OTAs, the off-season workouts, all that stuff. That's the only thing that matters. And to me, it's just ridiculous. I don't know why people even react to it. Just let it go, and just know that in the NFL world, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter one iota. I couldn't care less if Drake Maye was in Cabo, if he was in Miami, if he was in Sheboygan. I don't care. It's his off season. He just got done with the season where he took a lot of hits, right? He got smoked a number of times. A lot was put on his plate in his rookie season. If the young man wants to unwind and go on a vacation, I've got no problem whatsoever with it. And I think there were like 2 or 3 players at the introductory presser. And those guys, I think, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, they live around the area. So it's like you can kind of just take the trip over to Gillette and be like, all right, I'm here. I would love, I don't know if we can go back in time, but I would love to go back in time if somebody has the video or audio. Was there a stink made that Mac Jones was at Gerard Mayo's presser? Like, was that, I know people were like, oh, Mac Jones is there, but did that mean that Mac Jones was a better quarterback or a better employee than Drake Maye is? I think a lot of people didn't care much about Mac Jones being at the press conference. And as a matter of fact, I think some people, you know who you are, I think some people criticized Mac Jones for being at the press conference because they thought he was going to be gone. So which way do we want it for those people?
I will say on that topic, on Mac Jones being there, I do remember last year I reported at the time that people who were on the Patriots staff thought it was a complete joke that Mac Jones was there. And at least one of the coaches told me, and I don't know if this is true, but one of the coaches was like, he cleaned out his locker in like 0.2 seconds when the season was over, like didn't even leave a hanger in his locker. And then all of a sudden, he like popped over like he was still part of the team. They people on the staff thought it was a big joke.
For Drake, big fat ass nothing burger, and congratulations to you, Drake, and your wonderful future wife. I hope you had the vacation of your lifetime so you can refresh yourself, reset, and when football starts and you start doing these workouts, you are mentally and physically in the best possible shape that you can be in. So congratulations to you, sir.
By the way, two quick things on that.
Sure.
Number one, if I'm Drake Maye or anybody else and the way the weather is this year around here, there's no way in hell I'm leaving someplace warm to come back here for even like 30 minutes. Not a chance. I don't care what's going on. Like, it can wait. And there was one other thing, but it just went out of my head. The other thing I was going to say is, when these things kind of happen, I like to put myself in those people's shoes. And I don't think it's a stretch to say, given Drake, and I didn't love him not talking either after the season finale or the next day. I didn't love
I agree with that. I agree with that.
We talked about that. Like, that can't go on anymore past this year. But cut him a break this year. And plus Mayo had just been fired, which meant the coaches had just been fired. You really can't win by saying anything if you're Drake Maye. So I think he was just like, look, I'm out. I'm not going to say anything because either way it's going to get twisted. But about him not showing up like for Vrabel, put yourself in his shoes. He just spent his first professional season with these coaches, especially the offensive coaches, Alex Van Pelt, TC McCartney, Ben McAdoo, what have you. And, these guys are now, and, all things considered, and, they didn't do a terrible job, especially when it came to Drake Maye. And I don't know, being there for Vrabel, like, it's great, but you're sort of like tap dancing on the graves of guys you just worked with 6 months, day in and day out. And you did a pretty good job as a quarterback. So I can see him just being like, look, Mike Vrabel's the new coach. Let me let it breathe a little bit. And then, I'll be all in come April and let's go.
One last thing on this. I don't think anybody's brought this up during this conversation, but Vrabel was asked on Monday during the press conference if he had spoken to Drake, and he said yes. So who knows what was said in that conversation? It's quite possible, and I would even say it's reasonable, that when Vrabel spoke to Maye might have told him, hey, I'm going away on vacation, coach. Like, so, over the next week or so, I'm going to be on vacation. Should I go on vacation? Should I, maybe he even asked the coach, should I postpone the vacation for a couple of weeks? So Vrabel said he spoke to Maye before his press conference. So I'm sure that Vrabel was well aware of what was going on in Drake's life. And I'm sure Drake had a good conversation with the coach. And it's like, all right, well, we'll see you when you get to the facility. But people just overlook that. So anyway, something else popped up last night, Greg. Kirk Minahan.
Another nothing burger.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Kirk Minahan tweeted out that Robin Glazer was gone. Right? I want to get this exact. I want to make sure I get this exact what was said. Here was the tweet. Robin Glazer no longer with the Patriots organization. She was executive VP of football business, senior advisor to Gerard Mayo last season. Bert Breer went on Zolak and Bertrand today and said that she is still involved. First, what are you hearing, Greg?
I am hearing nothing because I don't care. And I really don't care. And I didn't care about her role this past year, what have you, even though other people like Bill Belichick and Mike Lombardi and Michael Felger, and even though they wanted to make a big deal out of it. Now, look, this is sort of, and by the way, it's only January. We have so freaking long to go, and I'm already sick and tired of crap. This is just, you can roll this into Elliot Wolf being the devil, Alex Van Pelt being stupid, Robin Glazer. Like, these are things like people are just out of control in this market. Look, here's the truth. And I don't know because I haven't called because I don't care, like I said. But my read on this is, and Robin took a step back from being intimately involved with football about, I don't know, early last season, the middle of last season, something like that. I would be surprised if she's not part of the Patriots organization, or at least the Kraft group, because before Mayo came aboard, like, she was really far, far away, or maybe towards the end of Belichick, she was really far, far away from football operations. She's, legal counsel,
Right.
helped with all their businesses. But, a lot of people, and I'll say this, I know from talking to people who know her, um, this year was not fun for her. And I think you could say that about a lot of people in this organization, because a lot of people had to do things that weren't part of their job description before. And this is all because of the Crafts, because they did the Gerard Mayo thing, and they needed to support Gerard Mayo in different ways.
Yep.
Like you could say, like from Robin Glazer to Elliot Wolf to you can name other people that had to do a lot more than what their job description really entails. And it was not a fun year for a lot of people in this organization because of the Crafts decision, which they ultimately said, you know what, we F this up. We're not doing this again. And we're getting Vrabel and blah, blah, blah. I think that, like I said, Robin was put in a difficult position. I don't think that's where she wanted to be. I think she was a proxy for Jonathan Kraft, which is really why she was being brought up. She was being brought up instead of saying Jonathan Kraft or tweaking him directly. They would do that, and I just thought it was really unfair for a lot of people. It was a red herring. It's not really what's important. What's important was that the Crafts effed up. They corrected that. They made the decision. They moved on. And can we all move on and just let people get it back to doing their real jobs that they were hired to do for the Crafts and the Patriots, and stop all this sandbox playground bullcrap?
Yeah, I think a couple things here. Number one, Glazer's role has been exaggerated from the beginning. It started with the Wickersham story from ESPN. I would say, though, that if she has been removed from the circle, and I'm not saying she was making football decisions, but if she's just moved away from the circle, that does mean something to me, because the Crafts are letting football people now do football people things, and they're streamlining it as well, right? Like, you don't need the extra voice now that you've got Mike Vrabel. You don't need the senior advisor to Mike Vrabel. So I do think it's important when you look at less voices that don't necessarily, if the voice doesn't have to be there, then remove the voice and get the football people in the room and let the football people do the football jobs. To come full circle, I would also say that Jerry Thornton, for what it's worth, he has tweeted about, what Kirk reported last night. And Jerry said, to be fair to Minahan's reporting on Glazer, I've heard from people with multiple sources inside the Patriots confirming the same thing. So, look, she's probably just not involved with as much as she was involved with last year, even if what she was involved with last year wasn't necessarily a gigantic deal. She's been removed. Let her do what she does. As Greg said, stop asking people to do things that they're not equipped to do or want to do. Get them the hell out of there and let the people work. And it goes for Elliot Wolf too. And again, people will think this is a major defense. I'm not excusing the moves that he made. I'm not excusing, or defending some of the decisions that he made. But I think it's fair to look at this operation and say it was an unmitigated shit show in 2024. And that impacted everybody at every level. And it impacted Mayo, yes, but it also impacted Wolf. It impacted everybody. And so how do you figure out? I've asked this question to Greg, and I've said this on the radio, and some people think I'm, oh, you're just standing up for Elliot Wolf. No, I'm not. I'm fine with Wolf being pushed aside and Vrabel and Cowden having the call. But I think it matters. When you look at this rookie class, just take Elliot Wolf out of it. You have a full rookie class. We don't know how much the operation effed those guys up. We don't know if Jalen Poe can be useful, even as a number 3 or 4 receiver. So let me see a group of coaches that actually know what they're doing, work with these guys, and let's see if they can bring anything to the table. To write them off after 1 year anyway is ridiculous. Greg and I have talked about that. Neither of us believe you should write any rookie off after 1 year, no matter how bad the rookie looked. You got to give everybody at least 2 years in the program. So let's see if Vrabel and hopefully a coaching staff that is much more experienced and better can get more out of these guys. All right, before we get to offensive coordinator, speaking of the staff, Greg wants to talk to you about Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I have made, well, first of all, let me tell you, there's a free square for the national championship game on Monday. If Will Howard throws, I think, for 1 yard, you get a free square, which, of course, I didn't use for my picks because I'm a moron. We learn this lesson every time you listen to this podcast. But by the way, I am not calling it the natty free pick. It's not the natty, even though my son would probably say that. No, it's the national championship. Do we have to shorten everything? But anyways, it's playoff time and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. I've made my picks for this weekend. I am going Derrick Henry, more than 96.5 rushing yards. Jaden Daniels, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. I got faith in the Rook. Jared Goff, less than 270.5 passing yards. James Cook, more than 55.5 rushing yards. Patrick Mahomes, more than 23.5 rushing yards. And Josh Allen, this is going to be a little controversial, less than 288.5 pass and rush yards. I think the Ravens snuff them out a little bit. You can play along with me. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Greg, I know you said that Vrabel's going to take his time with this offensive coordinator search, but I got to be honest here.
I didn't think this much time.
I was going to say, I'm surprised that there's not a single name being leaked and that there's no interview requests being sent out. I thought we'd have at least a couple of names at this point. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could tell you, Nick. This is odd. I think you noted that he said something about it as a press conference, like this afternoon, we're going to be doing like, X, Y, and Z, or at least getting going on this, including perhaps talking to some people. I really don't understand what's going on. And, normally, these types of things, like, the national people are going to own this stuff as far as like the news leaking and stuff like that, because they have relationships with these agents and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, sort of a warehouse for them. It's, fine, whatever. But I don't know. Maybe, maybe Mike Vrabel, had a tropical vacation lined up, maybe a vow renewal with his wife. Maybe he went down to see Drake Maye himself. I don't know, but I assume we're going to get going here. Yeah, I'm surprised. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and Vrabel said on Tuesday morning with Greg Hill that he was going to start talking to people on Tuesday. So, we're 48 hours later here. And then I sent the Judge Judy gif on Twitter last night of like her slapping the desk and pointing to her watch. Like, what I'm waiting for information here. Of course, I think this came out after we did our podcast earlier in the week, but Tommy Rees, right? This came out after. Tommy Rees is staying in Cleveland as their offensive coordinator. Could that have messed up anything as far as Vrabel's process here?
Yeah, it's very possible, but I gotta tell you, I'm, and it sounded like there's a guy out of Chicago who used to be in the Bears front office. I think his name's Greg Gabriel. He's on Twitter, and he's pretty plugged in with the Bears front office. And he tweeted at some point that basically he was hearing that Tommy Rees would be Vrabel's offensive coordinator, or was the favorite, and he was happy about that. That the Bears avoided Mike Vrabel for that reason. I think a lot of Tommy Rees. I think he's got a lot of potential. all the coaches that he's worked under, whether it's Notre Dame or Nick Saban or Kevin Stefanski, they all talk about how smart he is, and I'm sure he is. But I am not putting Drake Maye's future in the hands of a 32, 33-year-old offensive coordinator who's never really coached the quarterback position, certainly not at the NFL level. And so, but I do think because Greg said that and he's so connected to the Bears, Vrabel must have said that in this Bears interview. So yes, I do think that probably has complicated things.
I'm a Notre Dame fan, as many of you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be fair to Tommy Rees because it was his first OC gig. I was not a big fan of his play calling at all at Notre Dame. I did not think he was necessarily great as a play caller. Again, things have changed. He then went to Alabama. He worked with Jalen Milroe. He then went to Cleveland. So, people evolve. People get better at what they do.
Yep.
So maybe he would have been better if he was here next season. I didn't love it based off of my experience watching his offenses. I know he had Ian Book and he had some limited weapons as well, so that also plays a role. But I didn't love what I saw, and I agree with you. He's 32. He just doesn't have a ton of experience, and I know he played quarterback, but he hasn't worked with NFL quarterbacks at all. So, yeah, I was not in love with the idea of Tommy Rees, and that was before he decided to stay in Cleveland. He was not one of those guys that I said, oh, you got to bring him in. You've got to make that happen. Of course, people want to know, every time we talk about OC, what's the latest with Josh McDaniels?
I'm not really sure. It sounds to me, from people that I've talked to, that like he has a lot of strong interest around the league or has a lot of options, including possibly with Ben Johnson, who he has a relationship with. I will say I was me personally, I was pretty underwhelmed when Vrabel was asked, I think it was on EEI, about the list, and they asked him, like, Josh McDaniels is like, is Josh McDaniels on the list? Like, yeah, like, I don't know. I found that it's a little offensive. I mean, he knows the guy. He knows how successful he's been. Like, say something a little bit more, Bill. Like, I'd love to talk to Josh at some point. It's been a while since we talked, but obviously his resume speaks for himself. So hopefully we get a chance to connect here in the next couple of days, just something like that. But to just be like, yeah, I don't know if that would go over so well. But we'll have to see. I mean, again, it's quite possible that Vrabel, like, I don't know, went home for a couple of days and was coming back to really hit the ground running. I do think this is going to be a pretty long process. And plus, I do think the playoffs complicate things. And, we're hearing about, some staff departures or, I got to tell Nick, first of all, I think the Patriots were ahead of the game with what they did in hiring Vrabel and how fast they did. Look at these other teams. Like, they're taking forever, and they're not going to be able to talk in person until next week with any of these people that are still live in the playoffs. And, whether they're going to be able to do that in person and stuff, and how complicated it's going to be. I mean, a lot of these guys, we might not hear about another hiring, unless you go outside of the NFL, like, Deion Sanders with the Cowboys or whatnot, for another couple weeks. I mean, say what you want about the Rooney Rule. I said, Crafts, we've talked about this before. Crafts knew what they wanted. They didn't waste anybody's time. And, and they got on with it, and they're going to be like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of everything. So, I just think all of this fallout from the hirings, like teams that have fired head coaches, the coaches are still under contract. Some of them let them out in interviews. Some of them don't. Like, it's pretty complicated. So this whole process has been dragged out by the National Football League.
The Jets have interviewed, this is a real number, I think they've interviewed 16 head coach candidates, and I think they've interviewed 15 GM candidates. That the 33rd team's making their money, folks, for the Jets. They're interviewing everybody. Greg might get a phone call tonight. A couple things. Vrabel, to me, about how he answered the McDaniels thing, part of me does wonder if he was just being coy. Because if you go too far, if you go too over the top, does he kind of, does he want to make it sound like McDaniels is the odds-on favorite? If he is the odds-on favorite, which pretty much everybody nationally is saying it's going to likely be McDaniels. So if Vrabel comes out and makes it sound like McDaniels is the guy, does he not get to talk to some other people because they go, oh, well, here we go, inside job.
Mhm.
I don't know. So maybe he's being a little coy. The question I had for you, though, about the coordinator stuff, Greg, the Senior Bowl is on February 1st. Would it not be a good idea to have your staff, or at least most of your staff, in place by then, so you can start working, on the draft and free agency, and you got to have those meetings with your coordinators and stuff to put pieces together, correct?
Yeah, I think we've sort of been basically that. You'll hear this a lot. I think it's completely overrated. That talk, like football players are football players. They can and I think we've heard even when they put together, I think Mayo's staff. I think we talked about this before, and I think Elliot Wolf and other people were just like, look, we can retrofit anything we want, after the fact, and plus, you have Ryan Cowden there, so he knows what Vrabel wants and is looking for. So yeah, it used to be a bigger deal. It's not as much anymore, especially with the length of the hiring process.
All right, let's talk about game time, Greg.
Yes, let's. Game time picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Sports, the essence of it is you got to be there. You got to be there to experience it, whether it's Celtics with all the noise and the flashing lights, or my personal favorite, hockey. There's nothing like being at a hockey game in person. Like it's fine on TV. It's more of an in-person sport. So you gotta get there. Including, I was just looking on Monday, January 20th, the Bruins host the Sharks. 1 p.m. little matinee action. From $81. So get on over and check it out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Before we get to DC talk, any other OC names that you want to throw out there, or we're good to move on?
No. I did a column today for BSJ, sort of, no inside, knowledge or anything like that. Just sort of going through some of Vrabel's history. I got to say that overall, and talking to people who were around Mike or worked with Mike in Tennessee, I'm pretty scared about him staffing, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think it was very good in Tennessee. I mean, LaFleur, from what I understand, was more of a John Robinson hiring. I think Arthur Smith, they just sort of, he had been there for a while. It's not like Vrabel had, interviewed all these guys and, went to Arthur Smith. I think, he was basically the next man up, and he did that. That was really good for them. I think it was it Tim Kelly who was next after Arthur Smith?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I'm worried about. Like him going with guys he knows. Like Tim Kelly is not a good offensive coordinator. Todd Downing, not a good offensive coordinator. Like, but these guys are like Vrabel guys. Like, is he going to be like he needs to knock this thing out of the park, especially, it's one thing to hire these coordinators when you have, whether it's Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill, veterans who have, you're not really going to change that much. We're talking about a 22, 23-year-old franchise quarterback in Drake Maye. Like, he needs to knock this out of the park. And guys like Tim Kelly and Todd Downing, who don't know anything about the quarterback position, are not going to be they're not going to be any good. I remember Tim Kelly, I think he was with the Texans. There was another guy, Pat O'Hara, that was there with Billy O'Brien. He was sort of like an underling. Vrabel doesn't hire the offensive line very well. Like, that's been a disaster. Like, he needs to go out and get, like, real talented people. And it's a shame. But Nick, I just realized this. Remember last year, or no, it was Belichick's last year. And, Billy O'Brien came, and, we were like, oh, is Bill going to let him hire his own staff and stuff
Yeah.
like that? And they ended up going with Adrian Clem at offensive line. And I was like, why don't they just let him go get Mike Devlin, who's assistant offensive line coach for the Jets, who Billy O'Brien had in Houston? I said, go get that guy. And I just looked him up the other day because I was like, oh, maybe O'Brien might be like, oh, Vrabel, you should look at, remember Mike Devlin? Go look at him. He's been the Chargers offensive line coach. Like, Jim Harbaugh hired him and did a pretty good job this year. It's just like Vrabel can't make those kinds of mistakes, not with Drake Maye right now. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that it's Josh McDaniels. I don't feel great about that right now, but it better not be one of these like retread guys like Tim Kelly or, Justin Outen, who's the Titans tight ends coach. I don't want Nick Caley, no QB experience. I don't want Mike LaFleur, no QB experience, even though I think he got a bum rap in New York with the Jets with Saleh. I'm hopeful that they bring in like a guy like Clint Kubiak. Josh McCown, I like the idea of that, but he's never called plays. He's never been an offensive coordinator. I mean, he's been an NFL QB and he's coached QBs for 2 years, has a relationship with Drake Maye. That's good, but does he know anything about coordinating an offense? I don't know. I think Dave Ragone, the Rams QB coach, could be interesting, but another guy who's never called plays or done the job by himself. When he was offensive coordinator for Arthur Smith in Atlanta, Arthur Smith called the plays. So, I would say out of the guys out there, if it's Clint Kubiak or Josh McDaniels, I'm fairly happy about that. Anybody else, I'm not going to be very happy.
So a couple things, a lot to unpack. Number one, my fault. Tim Kelly was after Todd Downing. Todd Downing was 21-22. Then Tim Kelly was 20-23. I don't know how much the absolute disaster of the quarterback situation impacted those guys. I do want to be somewhat fair and say they had nothing to work with at quarterback. Tannehill, as 21-22 hit, he was really washed. They had Malik Willis. They had Will Levis. They just had a bunch of bleh. Blaine Gabbert was thrown in there. So, that does limit you. I'm not telling you those guys would be good. I don't know what they would look like with a better quarterback. They might be better. As far as Vrabel's role in all of this, I would hope he learned from Tennessee, his time in Tennessee. I would hope that he learned from his time in Cleveland, and he might approach this differently. I would hope that he evolves kind of his vision of, how to handle an offensive staff, how to find that offensive staff. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Clint Kubiak might be headed to Seattle. He has a second interview with the Seahawks. So it looks like the Seahawks are very likely well ahead of the game with Kubiak. So I think Kubiak is probably going to end up in Seattle. So it might be a safe thing to just kind of take him off the plate, which does go back to Vrabel. So if you were looking at Tommy Rees and Rees is now gone, maybe you were looking at Kubiak. Seattle got the jump on you for Kubiak. So, now you're looking at McDaniels. The name that you brought up, Ragone is interesting to me. I tweeted this days ago. If you're going to go with the first-time play caller, I would go with McCown because he's coached under Kevin O'Connell, who I have a lot of respect for. I think he's a very good coach, very good offensive coach. He has a pre-existing relationship with Drake Maye going back to high school. So I would imagine that would be a very, very easy transition for Drake Maye, somebody who knows Maye, somebody who has worked with Maye. So that relationship is very strong. And of course, he's a former quarterback and he has at least worked with quarterbacks the last couple of years. So to me, McCown is the guy. If you're going for the first-time play caller, I think McCown is very, very sexy. If you're going with the experienced guy, we've talked about it. McDaniels has to be at or near the top of your list. All right, let's get to defense, Greg.
Hang on one second. Just to let people know, I just wanted to give one example or two examples of Mike Vrabel. And I'm worried. Like, I'm not going to be like this guy, Jared Stillman, who Felger Mass played, all the time about his audio. Like, let's just say I brought his name up to a couple people in that area, and they were just like, it's not like he's like, he's more of a talk radio host than, actually like a reporter, like doing homework. Yeah. But I do worry about Vrabel. I have a worry about Vrabel's ego in that he thinks he can do a lot or make up for a lot of things. Like, I can hire this guy and I'll bring him along. And like, I don't want Mike Vrabel like spread thin. I want him to hire a great staff. Hopefully he learned some lessons and he reflected on that. And that's what he does. Whereas like, I'm going to put together the best staff, because what I want Mike Vrabel thinking up shit on the sidelines and different pressures and different, hey, we need to do this, or we need to do this on special teams. And, and if somebody needs help, he can help them a little bit, give them a little extra edge, like during the game planning. Like, that's why I want Mike Vrabel. I don't want Mike Vrabel to hire all these guys who aren't ready for what they're doing. And now he's spread too thin and we don't get that. Two examples of that scare me. Craig Aukerman, who was the special teams coach for Vrabel for a while, was a disaster, to the point that he got fired halfway through. At one point, he got the punter's leg broken. They had 2 punts blocked in a game. Vrabel finally had to fire him. Everybody knows I care about the offensive line. Keith Carter, offensive line coach, was a disaster. And then they just promoted, once they finally fired him, they just promoted this guy, Jeff Hoteling, who basically had zero experience. This was his experience, okay? He was Vrabel's last offensive line coach. He was a college coach at Wagner for a while, including head coach. He went to Hudson Valley. But that was before. Hudson Valley head coach, 2010. He coached at Colgate in 2020 and then joined the Texans in 2021. And then he was the offensive line coach in 2023. Like, that stuff can't go on. Like, he's got to go get people at offensive coordinator, offensive line. I saw something on Twitter the other day where somebody that I follow about coaching says a play caller is only as good as the offensive line coach. And I firmly believe that. I think we've seen that in practice the past couple years up here. Hopefully people understand that now and realize why I railed against certain things. But Vrabel cannot staff offensive coordinator or offensive line coach like he did at the end of in Tennessee, or else I'm just afraid. I'm afraid for Drake Maye's future.
I'm going to calm you down a little bit. I'm going to try to settle you down, okay? Because I feel a little wet blanket Bedard coming on right now.
Help me, baby.
A couple things I would say. Number one, there was a lot of change in Tennessee. And I don't know how many coaches could go out and find, 3 or 4 sets of offensive staff in a matter of 6 years. I mean, he was there with LaFleur. LaFleur was gone after year 1 to be the Green Bay head coach. So you have a major change. Then you go to Arthur Smith. Smith flees. So now you've got to find your third offensive coordinator in like 5 years, which I don't think is the most easy thing to do. And you're turning over a lot of staff because Arthur Smith and LaFleur inevitably are taking some guys from your staff. So you're trying to kind of do that turnover thing constantly, which is pretty difficult to stay ahead of. I think it's made even more difficult. And I'm not telling you he's going to be great at filling the offensive staff. He might be the shits. But I would say that, the other part, like we learned last year, it's not easy to find an offensive coordinator when you don't have a lot to sell. And unfortunately for Tennessee, the quarterback situation was a disaster, as I mentioned. They traded A.J. Brown. Doesn't make it easier for you to find somebody. You had your 2 best offensive linemen leave the team. So I don't know how much Vrabel had to sell to a prospective offensive coordinator. Now, maybe he didn't even want to think about it. Like you said, maybe he just said, Tim, Todd Downing's my guy because he's been with me. We're just going to promote him. Tim Kelly's we're just going to, that could 100% be the thing. Or it could be that, Vrabel looked at it and he couldn't get anybody that was exciting because they didn't have anything exciting to work with, which is how you landed on Alex Van Pelt last offseason. So I do think there are some extenuating circumstances which could have impacted Vrabel's handling of the offensive staff. But with that said, again, we'll see. Maybe not. Maybe it had nothing to do with the extenuating circumstances. Maybe he was stubborn. Maybe he was tunnel visioned. And maybe he just said, I'm sticking with my guys. And if that's the case, then it'll play out. I think it'll be McDaniels, if you're wondering. All right. Before we get to defensive coordinator and defensive thoughts, what are your thoughts about Naterno?
When it comes to keeping my home comfortable this winter, there's nothing more important than having a reliable team to handle things like heating, cooling, and plumbing. That's why I'm so glad I work with Naterno Home Services. These guys are local. They are family-owned and family-focused and have been servicing the greater Boston area for 15 years. I knew my heating system was giving out. It was aging, struggling to keep up. When it finally gave out, I needed a new part just to keep things running so the whole house and my kids and wife didn't freeze. And guess what? Naterno came through in a big way. They replaced the pump for free that day, free of charge, giving me heat for 3 more days until they install my new system. Who does that? Nobody. Naterno does, though. They were on time, professional, and made the entire process stress-free. I couldn't have asked for a better experience. Naterno isn't just about heating either. They're my go-to for plumbing, cooling, even water and air quality solutions. They've got the expertise to handle whatever your home needs. Here's the best part. You can get 10% off your next service with Naterno. That could save you up to $1,000 on your next project. Just visit NaternoHome.com/Bedard. That's NOTTURNO home.com/Bedard for all details and conditions. Take advantage now. These deals won't last forever. Trust me, having a team like Naterno Home Services in your corner makes all the difference. Whether you need a quick repair or a major installation, they'll get the job done right. Check them out today.
By the way, rest in power to Bob Uecker. Got to say that. We're both baseball guys. Uke was the best. 90 years old, passed away. Hell of a run. We love you, Uke. One of the best. One of the best. So Bob Uecker, R.I.P. my friend. All right, defensive coordinator, defensive thoughts, Greg, because we've spent a lot of time on offense, and rightfully so, because Vrabel's a defensive guy. But kind of just your big picture thoughts about how this defense could look and maybe some names on that side.
Yeah, I do think, Vrabel I haven't done a deep dive on this, but, Vrabel, from what I remember about studying the Titans when Vrabel was there, especially when they played the Patriots and sometimes beat the freaking pants off the Patriots, including Tom Brady with, Marcus Mariota. They're more of a 4-3 team. I wouldn't say they're overly multiple. They don't blitz a lot. They sort of split between man and zone. But again, I think, it's the same thing as talking about Mike Vrabel with offense. Like, you can look at what he did in Tennessee. Is that what he believes? Or is he just damn good at using the stuff that he has at his disposal, like Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown?
Yeah.
I think that's the case with their defense, too. I think when he gets here, I mean, he's not going to make Christian Gonzalez play zone all the time because that's what he believes in. No, he's going to use him. He's going to use him on the chessboard. So as far as a defensive coordinator, I mean, I have a feeling. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of different directions that they could go. I mean, there's obviously guys. Shane Bowen, I think, would probably be the guy, but he's still, as of today, the Giants' defensive coordinator. Guys sort of. It would be a surprise if he reached out to them because he's never worked with them. But they're guys I would talk to. Lou Anarumo, who used to be the Bengals DC. I think he's awesome. Matt Eberflus, I think he's great as a defensive coordinator. Remember, Josh McDaniels sort of tabbed him as his defensive coordinator with the Colts. And then Josh said no. But the Colts followed through and hired Eberflus, and he was so good he got the Bears job. Robert Saleh. It looks like he's probably going to get another head coaching gig, one of these at some point. But if not, I think he's tremendous as a defensive coordinator. Some of the guys that, besides Bowen, that Vrabel knows, Ryan Crow, Dolphins outside linebacker, seems to be an up-and-comer. It'd be sort of akin to DeMarcus Covington. It'd be his first sort of big role. But again, you'd have Vrabel there to help him. I think Vrabel does help his defensive coordinators a lot. Pat Graham, Raiders defensive coordinator, has been interviewing a bit, I think, for a couple of head coaching jobs. But I think he's really good, very smart, very respected. And, of course, he comes from the same line, so him and Vrabel would speak the same language. Bobby King, Eagles inside linebackers coach, coached the same spot for Vrabel for 2 seasons. His unit's done really well under Vic Fangio, so his time could be coming. And Terrell Williams, Lions defensive line run game coordinator. Talking to some people who know Vrabel from Tennessee, they would be surprised about that. There's a bunch of guys that sort of even like Charles London on the offensive side, even though he's Seattle's QB coach, like everybody says, like he's a running backs guy, or, and they think that Terrell Williams is really, a defensive line coach at heart. So we'll see. I mean, one guy I definitely do, well, if the Rams let him out, John Streaker, the Rams game management assistant, he was Vrabel's right-hand man and sort of Ernie Adams. And then he went over to the Rams this year. Does McVay let him go or not? McVay's been really good about that stuff. About he doesn't care. He lets people, hey, go do what you're going to do. I mean, I think talking to Vrabel people, they were like, if they can get his nickname Stretch, if they can get Stretch, if he can get him, expect him to be there with Vrabel to be sort of like his right-hand man, administrative assistant, game management type guy.
Let's go Stretch. Give me Stretch, baby. I'm trying to find the tweet. It was weeks ago, and I've been trying to scroll through my Twitter here over the last 3 minutes, and I can't find it. I'm trying to find the exact date. But I had tweeted my hopes as far as the coaching staff when I had enough of Gerard Mayo, which had to be pretty much right after that Chargers game where I was like, okay. Like after the Arizona game, I said, I'm ready to move on. After the Chargers game, it was, if they don't move on, it's going to be a Travis mockery, and they need to get their asses moving. But I can't find the exact date of the tweet, so I apologize. But I just want to bring this up because Greg just brought up Matt Eberflus, and it was at least a couple of weeks ago. I said, give me Mike Vrabel head coach, Josh McDaniels OC, and Eberflus DC.
Yep.
I think that would be a ridiculous coaching staff. And maybe we'll get it. Maybe we won't. I guess we'll see. All right. Before we get to our divisional picks this week, check out BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard, Giardi, tag teaming Patriots coverage. You also want to download the Prize Picks app. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase when buying tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. And, of course, Greg just told you about Noturno Home Services, noturnohome.com/Bedard. 10% off your next service. Could save up to $1,000. All right. Texans at Chiefs. Chiefs minus 8.5.
So I like the Chiefs to win, but I think it's going to be close. So give me the points with the Texans, but the Chiefs will win.
Yeah, Chiefs haven't scored a ton of points. So Houston's got those 2 edge rushers. I think, tackle's been a question. Joe Thuney moving to the left side. Left tackle has helped the Chiefs big time. Man, Thuney's done great, all things considered, at that spot. But I do think Houston's pass rush can get to Mahomes a little bit. So I agree with you. I like the Chiefs to win, but I do think that the Texans can keep it to within a touchdown or so. All right, Commanders at Lions. Lions minus 8.5.
So this is one of the tougher ones for me. Like, I don't know. I do think I think if I do a little wagering this weekend, I might pick these teams with the buys to get off to slow starts, but eventually go into gear. I don't know. I think the Commanders are game. I think the Lions win, but I do think it's going to be like a touchdown game, a field goal to touchdown game. So again, I'll take the Commanders and the points.
I hate to always agree with you, but the Commanders, I think, look, Ben Johnson's great. We all know that. I think the Lions will score some points, but I also like Jaden Daniels, that Commanders offense. The Lions defense is still banged up big time. So I think the Commanders could put some points up on the board. What's fun to me about this game is all hell's going to break loose with the coaches, because we know Dan Campbell, his approach, 4th down, super aggressive. And then we saw last week Dan Quinn going on 4th down over and over and over again. We might not have a punt in this game. These guys might just be staring at each other across the field, pointing and going, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. Like fourth down hysteria. I'll go with the Commanders getting the 8.5. I think Detroit wins the game. Rams at the Eagles. Eagles -6.
I don't like that I'm going to have to say this because nothing makes me delight more outside of Yankees fans losing. It's Philly fans losing, especially at home. But I have a feeling that the Rams were going to be the week 1 team that everybody's just like, ooh, look at this team. Like they looked really good, but then they fall flat in the second round. And I do think it's going to be tough for them. Everything that's going on in LA, they got to fly to Philly. I think the emotions are going to catch up with them. I like the Eagles in a blowout, unfortunately. And I did want to say, I think Vic Fangio, if Vic Fangio wasn't there, I would probably pick the Rams, but I think Fangio's the difference between this and other Eagles teams that have fallen flat.
Give me Eagles -6. Ravens -1.5 at the Bills. This, of course, is the game of the weekend. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all that good stuff. How do you feel about this game?
I don't know how the Bills stop the Ravens. I really don't. I think the line is right. I think the Ravens should be favored. I think the world of Josh Allen. I just think the Ravens are a team. They're number 1 in DVOA. They've gotten better. It seems like they've gotten better defending. I don't know how the Bills are going to defend Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry running the ball. So give me the Ravens by probably like a touchdown.
I'm going Bills.
Or more.
I'm going Bills. They got Milano back. They're going to do a better job against the run. The Ravens' pass defense, not very good. I think Josh Allen could do some things against them. They got I think they do just enough. Tough, though. Tough game. But I'll go with the Bills. I need to disagree with something that Greg says. So give me the Bills. We'll take the points. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Maybe by early next week, we'll actually have an offensive coordinator interview in the books. Maybe. I'm not promising anything. Enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.